warm welcome to the show. Tonight we're talking about a space where science and culture meet, a space they don't always share. My guest believes science only truly comes alive when it's shared, challenged, and understood outside of academic journals. Joanna Bagniewska, a biologist and a passionate science communicator, joins us all the way from Oxford. Hello and welcome, delighted to have you with us.
Thank you for the invite. Hello, thank you so much for the invite.
So in one of your recent interviews, you said that zoology is all about feces and procreation. So why is it so important to educate people on the topic?
You are being very polite about it. I believe I said it's all about sex and poo, which it is. That's what animals do. But even though I teach ecology and I lecture environmental science, I use these two things, sex and poo, as these hooks that are starting points for conversations about animals, because it's funny, because it's sometimes weird, and people like to hear stories that are a little bit out there. And for me, that's a pretext to then talk about the more serious side of zoology and ecology, which is, biodiversity crisis, or how different mechanisms of life work. And so, yes, I do use it as a starting point, and I think it's a nice bit of storytelling that you can plug in.
And speaking of biodiversity, Life, the Wild Wonders of Biodiversity is, I believe, your recent book meant specifically for children.
Yes, so this is a book. I have it right here. I was the co-author on that. The first author, main author, is Jennifer N.R. Smith, who's a wonderful illustrator as well, as you can tell. But this book just brings all the ideas of biodiversity and where species came about to the younger reader. I think it's really important to get kids interested in nature, because in today's world you see this increasing disconnect from nature, and at the same time we know for a fact that our relationship with nature translates to our well-being. So there's this idea called the biophilia hypothesis, which states that we like being around green spaces, we like being around nature. It makes us feel better, it makes us feel calmer. But kids these days are very often sheltered from nature. People say, oh, don't go outside, you'll catch a cold, or you'll get dirty, or a mosquito will bite you. And kids are growing to fear nature and to just not connect with it. And so my way of reasoning is that if you know more and more about something, if you're curious about something, if something is interesting, you will build that connection, and you will then be prompted to go outside and connect with it in 3 dimensions. So this is, again, a little pretext to get kids connected with nature.
And you're a lecturer in ecology, as you've mentioned, but you're also a professional popularizer of science at Oxford, right? So what does this job entail?
So yes, I'm a science communicator. I split my time between doing ecology and science communication. It's an interesting role in that I try to bring science to the general public. Scientists, academics in general, but scientists in particular, very often speak in a very particular way. They use a lot of jargon. They are so immersed in their own research that they forget that not everybody else in the world is just as interested in it or just as familiar with it. But research really makes so much more of an impact if it's understood more broadly. And again, getting the buy-in from the public towards a certain piece of research will mean that there is more interest, more political interest, more traction, more funding, and then it also translates into action. So even if we look at things like climate change or biodiversity crisis, there's much more of a narrative around it these days than even what it was 10, 15 years ago. This is all created because people take an interest, and people take an interest because they know more about it, because not only is there more knowledge available, but it's more mainstream. And my role is bringing science and research into the mainstream.
And what are some of the potential pitfalls? I mean, like how to strike a balance between being accurate and accessible at the same time?
So this is a great question, and it's something that I think about all the time, because on one hand, you can't, some of my colleagues will say, dumb down things too much, and many academics will not want to engage in science communication or public engagement because they feel like they would have to go down to the very, very basics, and people just won't get their actual research questions. So that is one side of things, not to make things overly simplistic. I always tell my students, be like David Attenborough, because he's brilliant at explaining things in a simple way, but not in a way that's patronizing. He doesn't treat his audience as children. Of course, children do watch David Attenborough movies, but everyone, both young and old, can appreciate what he says. On the other hand, you don't want to pitch it too high so that the message just goes completely over the head of the audience. You need to make sure that everyone is on board with the message. You can't leave them behind, because if you start off with something that's really complicated, you lose the audience and you bore the audience, and they're not willing to follow you through. So it's just a wasted opportunity.
And especially in the era of misinformation, right? Your job is very important. I wanted to go back to the COVID-19 pandemic and the whole thing around vaccines back then. What was your role then?
So back then, I was working in the Department of Pediatrics in Oxford. So I had two jobs along my ecology role. I also did communication and public engagement in pediatrics, and the biggest research group in pediatrics was and still is the Oxford Vaccine Group. And that group was responsible for the development of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. So as you can imagine, I had my hands full in 2020 and 2021, because we had a lot of journalists approaching us to get more information about how the development of the vaccine is proceeding, to ask questions, to do fact checking. And it was always greatly appreciated from our side that it was a team of 5 of us answering all the questions, that they came and they asked these questions rather than making assumptions. I think that's really important. If you don't know something, ask an expert. And our team was there to be the first port of call to answer these questions. And if we didn't know something, we would go back to the people in the lab and ask them for details. We tried not to do that all the time because they were actually busy, saving the world. But sometimes it was more important to get the right message across so that they would spare us the time to explain things. But also, I was working with the Polish community in the UK. We organized a series of online meetings where we would answer questions about the vaccine development process. I was teamed up with medical doctors, with virologists, other experts who could provide this holistic overview of guidance and vaccine development and how COVID-19 works and all of this. And it was a really interesting experience for me, because up until that point, my science communication, my public engagement experience has been very positive, because everybody likes to hear about animals. I mean, what's not to love? But all of a sudden, I was met with a range of reactions, from enthusiasm to kind of neutral hesitancy to hostility, because while some people came to the meetings to kind of do a little bit of checking, they would ask questions like, I had cancer, could I still take the vaccine? This was a question that could be answered by a medical professional. There would also be people who were very much confused, and they would ask things like, why are there pieces of chimpanzees in the vaccine? And you're like, where did that come about? And then you start asking them questions and unpicking the where that misconception came from, and that's still fine. It might seem a bit of a strange question to ask, but as long as people ask, we can work through it together, explain step by step how the vaccine comes about, where does the chimpanzee idea even come from, and so on and so forth.
But I mean, what do you think makes people so prone to believing in conspiracy theories they find oftentimes online?
It is a sign of our times. Information is at our fingertips, which is good, but we have not been well trained in verifying what is credible and what is not. And I'll be honest, scientists don't help with that, because we very often think that if people are given facts, that is enough. And if people are given more facts, then they should be definitely convinced. That is not how people work. As scientists, we have been trained in the scientific method where, yes, if you're presented with more information, you verify your previous beliefs based on that information to incorporate that. And that's part of the iterative scientific method. But most of the world are not scientists. Most of the world doesn't think like that. We want to hear stories. We want to have the different viewpoints. We want to hear personal experiences. This is what turns informing into convincing. And very often people who are content creators online are good at storytelling, but they're missing that, actual content bit. And I think unless they're doing it maliciously, this is where misinformation can happen. People oversimplify things.
But you also are an excellent storyteller, and that brings me to your other book, Modern Bestiary. Could you perhaps share with us some exciting stories about these creatures? I mean, one creature perhaps.
Oh my goodness. So in this book, I describe 100 different creatures and 100 different stories about them. So picking one is almost like picking your favorite child. It's very difficult. We've got things that are completely gory and things that are unbelievable and things that are kind of sweet. I did enjoy writing about the Laysan albatrosses who pair for life, and they are so incredibly committed to sitting on the nest and keeping their egg warm that they will do so for weeks at a time while the other partner is going out fishing. And they come from Hawaii, and one of them will be sitting on the egg in Hawaii while the other one flies off to Japan and then comes back a couple of weeks later all fed, and then they can swap. And while the poor albatross on the egg is sitting and waiting, it doesn't eat anything because it can't leave the nest. It will just drink a few droplets of rain, and that's that. And so it's very, there's a lot of commitment in that way. I found it very endearing. Although on the other hand, they're very faithful and very committed, but they've got not great eyesight at all. So when the chick is already hatched and when it's a little bit older and both parents can leave the nest, sometimes the little chick, as little ones do, will go for a little bit of a wander. And even if it's like 2 meters away from the nest and the parents come and see the nest is empty, they will go, "Oh, my baby's not here. I guess I don't have it anymore. Bye." And the young chick will not be fed because it didn't wait in its proper place, which is completely bizarre, but at the same time fascinating. So it's little stories like that I describe in this book, and they're very short, just 2 pages each. My publishers are not very happy when I say that, but I will say it anyway. It makes for a very good bathroom book, toilet book, because the chapters are short and they're quite gross and quite funny. But you can read it anywhere, really. It's up to you. And the book has come out in Korean as well, if you're a Korean speaker. It came out in Mandarin, and it's coming out in Polish this year. So hopefully one of the languages will be appropriate for you.
That is super exciting and an excellent recommendation. Joanna Bagniewska, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Pulse of Culture. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.